Alhamdulillah, that's like more than you need in dunya. Until you see that feast. And mashallah, you know there's food that only shows up in Ramadan, man. Like desserts and sweets and stuff. I don't know why they don't make this stuff during the rest of the year. We can eat throughout the day, right? But you see this, and just before Adhan, your mind was like, sip of water, date, I'm good. But then you see it and those eyes open up, right? And it's like if your eyes could eat it, they would eat all the food and the table underneath it and just consume it, right? That's that hawa, that desire. You weren't even intending on that. If you had just had a couple morsels of food, it's not like you'd be complaining, no, I'm not eating. I'm going to eat unless there's a feast. This water, I'm not too good for this. No, you better believe you would have eaten it. But once you see that feast, that hawa comes. Now what happens, and understand this is a small example. It's a small example because satisfying the hawa here mostly harms yourself and not others. If you really overeat, how do you feel? You see, that's a deception of dunya. I didn't ever ask you if you showed up to Taraweeh. Man, just snooze for the night. I mean, not literally, but let's just go for this example. But that's a deception of dunya. If you eat that, if you overindulge, you feel horrible. I don't mean spiritually horrible only, I mean physically horrible. It's like the enjoyment is just overwhelmed with you just feel lousy. I'm not talking about emotionally lousy or spiritually lousy. That's like anti-icing on the anti-cake. I can't come up with an example. That just makes the bad worse. But you feel physically horrible. Now that's a limited example where indulgence and desire harms the self primarily. A lot of indulgence and desires harms others. Nobody indulges in companionship inappropriately in the desire for companionship, except that they're ruining somebody else's life with themselves. And probably not just one person. A person's connected to others, has loved people, has people that have to inherit the mess that indulgence in this desire just created. And even in the desires of haram, there is an overwhelming and intoxicating deception. Forgive me for the example, but the masajid are not places where we ignore dunya and talk about fluffy stuff. We talk about things that impact them. In popular culture, in Hollywood and elsewhere, what do the cool people always have in their hands? Drinking, alcohol, right? It's idolized and looks so cool. Cool. In popular culture. But in reality, people that indulge in those things. If you have a scene, forgive me, American Icon of the stuff, Las Vegas, right? What do you see 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night in that movie? Oh, lights. Or pictures, right? You see the Valley of Nevada. It's a barren desert, but it's got lights and fountains. And they hardly charge you for hotel rooms because they make a killing on everything else. You want to stay in Raleigh, you got to pay for a hotel room, otherwise the hotel will go out of business. There, they don't need it. You can access your room, you got to walk through the casino. They'll make a killing. They can give you the room practically for free. The house always wins. But for a moment, those lights, those people look, smiles on their faces, looks great. It's not just desire for gambling, it's alcohol, it's women, it's companionship, it's this. You know what they don't show you? What those people look like at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. It's deceptive. People have makeup on and this and that, and they look on top of the world. Those same people are vomiting in the streets, are physically miserable because they've been through misery. They've been through abuse, they've been through mistreatment. They never show that in movies. They don't even show that in real life. And those same corners of any street where everybody looks a certain way at 7 or 8 o'clock, and the person comes back 3 or 4 in the morning and look at those same people, you wouldn't want for them what they've been through. You certainly wouldn't want it for yourself. So this counterintuitiveness of dunya is very important. The Prophet ﷺ warned about it in many places. Actually, in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ tells the companions of a time where the where the nations, the word used is like will pounce upon you. And the indication here is an illegitimate pouncing upon the ummah. Right? Pouncing like the way a lion jumps on its prey out of nowhere. So the Prophet ﷺ talks about a time at the end of times where the nations, people will conspire and pounce upon the ummah illegitimately. And sadly, we may see signs of this or indications of this in many places in the world where people face unfair and systematic and unrelenting oppression and tyranny and poverty and dhulm and exclusion from opportunity that sometimes goes a generation or more. That is literally the enemies, so-called superpower enemies or so on are what? Playing chess games, right? So there's a Cold War, but the whole Middle East and North Africa and Asia are all just chess pieces. I mean, they're supposed to be antagonists, but they're really just splitting the pie. So this could be an indication of hadith. But then the Prophet ﷺ talks about the root of this. The companions, it was hard for them to imagine what the Prophet ﷺ was indicating. So they wanted to understand more. The Prophet ﷺ, when it was asked what caused this, he said al-wahn. But al-wahn, they had never heard of this word before. So they asked Rasulullah, what is al-wahn? The Prophet ﷺ said, love of dunya and karahiyat al-maut, and hating death. Over-attachment of dunya to the world of life and hating death, hating to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understand the Prophet ﷺ is talking about world affairs. I'm being very specific with my language. I'm not talking about some clash of civilizations or East versus West or any of this nonsense. I'm talking about the illegitimate pouncing upon people for the purposes of exploitation and mistreatment and individual goals until sworn enemies pounce together. And that world affair is traced to what? Loving the dunya and hating death. That disease of the heart can ultimately not only impact the person, but the very course of world affairs. I think it is worthy of criticism that for a lot of us, we talk about the what and the why. But especially in tazkiyah, the purification of the soul, I believe we don't talk enough about the how. So really, most of what I've said today is a reminder to you. Maybe you heard another hadith, maybe you're reminded of something you haven't heard, but it's not like it's news to you that a big part of our deen is to see the dunya in its context. You've heard that many times. Trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't be attacked. I hope we're seeing it in a new context and making new connections. I don't want to belittle that process. But at its core, the what, you've heard that before. You probably heard it in many khutab and many lessons. But we're going to push ourselves further. How was this achieved? By this family? By the righteous people. The family of Prophet Ibrahim achieved this at a level that is unreal. We've spoken about some, we still have to speak about others, but I'm just going to say one-liners and you're going to understand. Prophet Ibrahim's family was tested with many unique tests that average people don't go through. We talked about it last week. What was the opening ayah that we reflected on? Surah Al-Baqarah. Oh, is that the answer? Yes, that ayah in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. Behold, when Abraham was tested by his Lord with some commandments, and he perfected them completely. So think about some of those tests. As part of that test, the family of Ibrahim could not have continual access the way, say, many families are able to live together. Our mother Hajar, her situation is unique. It's not just any wife or any mother. For most of Ismail's life, his father was absent, not absent in a neglectful sense, absent in the sense of unique dawah circumstances that were affecting multiple countries. He couldn't be there every day or every couple days. You understand the greatness of this woman to raise a child not resenting his father, that he's not going to have the access that many sons would have to their father growing up? That is a great and a unique feat. That is one feat of an incredible life. Do you understand that level? I want you to look at the heart now. Do you understand what it took for that incredible believing woman to not complain, to not say, why me? To not say, is this the only family that could have been leaders for all of mankind? I mean, yeah, we see the moments of glory, right? You see this praise, but do you understand the life that took to be worthy of that praise? To not raise that child with a resentment, to truly liberate her own heart from any of these pulls of dunya. I understand I am not disrespecting these figures. I am elevating them because to act like these pulls of dunya weren't there is to minimize their contribution. The companions of Rasulullah ﷺ were not angels, they were human beings. That means the dunya, the pulls of dunya were there for them just as they were there for us. If they overcame them, if they built a distance between them and them, that is a statement of a great heart. It's not a coincidence, it's not an accident. Some families in this room know what it means to be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with infertility. Even to have that test temporarily. To think, what if we will never be able to conceive children of our own? Even, a couple, mashallah, that really had overwhelming belief that they would never be able to have children. It was 10 years before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with their child. They've almost not lost all hope in a spiritual sense, but physically, doctor-wise, there's no reason to hope. 10 years of patience. Prophet Ibrahim may have been in his 80s when he got blessed with his first child. They had already, it's not 10 years. From a physical sense, this was a miracle. The wife had lost all hope she was past childbearing age, and Prophet Ibrahim was an old man. And then to be asked, not when the child is a newborn. I don't want to hate on newborn babies, man, but there is that period where they don't smile back. They're sweet and everything, but you're not getting some of those dunya feedback. I'm going to stop there before I get in trouble. But there's a difference. But then when they grow older, there's a special experience when that first step and then that first word, and then they can give and take, and then there's this curiosity. I'm not saying you weren't attached to them before, but there's another level that's very different. It was then that Prophet Ibrahim was asked to sacrifice after all those years. Really, not just him, but as a family, to not resent, to not complain. This is a statement of an incredible level of spiritual purification. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises this in the next page. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When his Lord commanded him, submit, he said, I have surrendered and submitted to the Lord of the worlds. This is the core of what it means to be Muslim. So part of this discussion is how. And in this is a trap for many people. We've been talking about don't be overattached to dunya. Don't love dunya. Don't covet dunya too much. So what do a lot of Muslims start doing? When you don't love something, you start hating it. Is it righteous in our deen to hate the dunya? I want you to discuss this with a partner or two for about 2 minutes. Is it righteous in our deen to hate dunya? Go ahead. Explore it.
The thing is, those guys, it's all elements you use there's no problem. They have all of the life spaces. I think some people have a lot of yeah, it takes you like 10, it'll be
Okay, let's come back together. I hope we had some good discussions, inshallah. What did you think? Should we hate dunya to fulfill these ahadith? Seeing some no's? Maybe some yeses? No.
He brought a good point here, saying like, if you hate dunya, how will you be thankful for whatever it is that you
Okay. If you hate dunya, how will you be thankful for what Allah has given you? Powerful. Any other thoughts? Should we hate or loathe dunya?
This is the probationary period.
I'm sorry, one more time.
This is the probationary period that
Okay.
we go through in order to get to Jannah.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. So probationary period that it has, it is part of that journey that we value. Anyone else?
And there's one, Allah said, I make dunya for you, but I make you for
Inshallah, inshallah. Excellent. That's good.
It links to the concept of qadr. There was, you can't hate the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and feel it with the purpose.
Okay. Good. Alhamdulillah. Yes.
يعني in our religion ولا تنسى نصيبك من الدنيا.
So الآية سورة القصص ولا تنسى وبالتالي فيما آتاك الله الدار الآخرة, that seek with what Allah has granted you the abode of the hereafter. ولا تنسى نصيبك من الدنيا, and don't forget your share of dunya. It's an ayah in the Quran al-Kareem. So interestingly, a lot of great comments, but to think about bringing these together, hatred is just the opposite polarity of love. It is assigning it value through negative polarity instead of positive. But what we are learning is that dunya does not have value with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that it's useless. In fact, dunya is the capital of the believer. Where are you going to do your ibadah? What time are you going to use? What money is going to use? That's why it's not haram to acquire dunya, to have dunya, to possess dunya. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about coveting it. We're talking about my life is over if I don't get this. We're talking about you don't control the results in dunya. So having a goal of running a multi-million-dollar company so you can do righteous thing is different from hinging your iman on having that. From hinging your happiness on having that. Because you may not have it. So we're going to talk about this a lot, but I want you to really mull this in your mind. We're not saying it's haram to have, to possess, to acquire, even to set a healthy goal and try to go get it. We're talking about coveting. We're talking about desiring in the hawa sense. We're talking about going through dunya. We don't have a direction, and so every pull, it just happens, right? It's a turbulent ride. When you're going on a tough ride, you prepare yourself. If it's snowy outside and you have to drive, you check those tires. You make sure you don't just go, oh, if I slide off, I'll just go wherever. No, but the dunya is much worse than that. As you're going towards your goal, there's going to be glitter, there's going to be lights, there's going to be bad suggestions, bad companionship. How do you deal with that? A lot of Muslims. And again, I'm not just judging or criticizing. I think our literature and the way we approach the topic has to change. A lot of Muslims, to avoid loving it, they hate dunya, and who else do they hate? They hate themselves. They loathe themselves and other people, in addition, all of which are problematic. The opposite of arrogance is not not humility. It is humiliation. Allah asked us not to be arrogant, but He did not ask us to be humiliated. He asked us to be humble. Humble is not the opposite of arrogance. It is the balance between arrogance and humiliation. Aisha radiallahu anha, she saw a man kind of dragging himself in the streets of Medina. She's like, what's up with this person? What's wrong with this man? Said he's, exhausted from having spent the night in Qiyam prayer. This is like a false humility, like, oh, I'm a believer, I can't look up, stuff like that. Aisha radiallahu anha, she criticized this man by praising Umar ibn al-Khattab. She said, Umar is a person, when he walked with intent. When he struck purposefully. Like, he knew where he was going and he went. And so, righteousness is not this false facade. And Ibn al-Munabbih, rahimahullah, he has a simple but brilliant statement. He says, everything is tarafaini wa wasat. That everything has two extremes and a justly middle. عليك بالأوسط في جميع الأمور. You should pursue the balanced middle in all affairs. So also, here, the goal we're going for is not coveting and loving dunya, but it is also not debasing and hating dunya, because both assign it value. As the narration goes, that dunya, if it had the worth of a mosquito's wing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a conscious rejecter would not drink a sip of, like a drink of water. But dunya does not have value with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why are we being bent out of shape, loving or hating something? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking us to value, to lift in our lives. I want to make this practical, and I want to expand our discussion from last time. I want to take several questions also. Actually, before we switch gears, let me take some questions, inshallah, but I ask you to be patient. If I hear a question that's very linked to something we're about to talk about, I'll ask you to hold on to it. So I'll open for any questions, inshallah, yes.
Can you talk about the unjust pouncing of other nations?
Yes.
What would be an example of unjust pouncing?
Depends on how, the question was, I talked about an unjust pouncing. What would be an example of a just pouncing? So, terms are about how you define them. If we define the word pouncing to be something that is unjust, then it's not needed description. I was trying to go the extra mile in clarifying that the Prophet ﷺ was not talking about a clash of civilizations or just a military conflict or even a conquest. It was really a subjugation and a humiliation and an illegitimate taking from the other in this hadith. And that doesn't mean that that's the only form of injustice, but it's different. That's why companions asked a lot of questions, because they had suffered torture in Mecca. They had suffered immensely. Even in Medina, people were pursuing them militarily. But the Prophet ﷺ did not describe it in these terms. It was different. They had not seen a lot of elements that some of which may have seen in our time, such as colonization and other examples. Other questions about what we've discussed so far?
So suppose you had like a Muslim college student who's kind of like, struggling with like worldly desires and like cultural norms and aspects and trying to maintain their faith. How would you suggest them go about training themselves or coming to like hate those very things that they should stay away from?
This is not me, I promise, but it was very timely. This is like very, very timely, inshallah. It's a broad question. I'll suggest some ideas. So, part of the structure that we introduced today may be helpful for oneself while including others, but generally when we're talking about freeing ourselves or freeing others from that intoxication, right? Dunya is intoxicating. So these very things that seem dangerous, once they're in front of us or with our personal interests, that pull is very strong. So it's more of an art, not just a science, how to help someone. But there are multiple approaches. At any point, the heart may be fitting towards one, right? And so sometimes the pull of particularly in formative years or in college years, the pull of good companionship can be more effective than 1,000 lectures. Sometimes a person genuinely doesn't know. Like they think that something is Islamic, but it's actually cultural. And so a lecture or going together to a program or knowledge can be very effective. Sometimes you're not the right messenger, but somebody else is, even though the message is sound. And so these approaches are very contextual. Inshallah, with anonymous identities, if there's a specific case study or something, we'll go together, we can get more ideas. But also, I hope that the structure we talk about today would be very helpful, inshallah. But it's important, most people, when they think about helping someone or helping themselves out of this pull of dunya, they think in one language, which is like a lecture or an Islamic knowledge, like here, this is wrong. Most people don't act on these things in the first place because of, just because of intellect. They act because of feelings or company or feeling cool and so on. And so using those very feelings to attach to positive things can often even be more effective than just a pure intellectual approach.
Can we take like good lessons from Sufism, or this can consider as an extremes? Like in Allah warn us not to take things to extreme, stay in the middle.
In general, did everybody get the question?
No.
The question was, can we take examples from Sufism in doing this, or is this an example of an extreme and Allah warned us not to go to extremes? As with many labels of Muslim groups or labels in general, it can become so broad as to be not helpful. And so Sufism is used in different contexts and about different groups, which actually disagree with one another on many things, number one. And number two, encompass things ranging from well within the bounds of Sharia and the example of the Prophet ﷺ, but just structured towards typical suggestions or spiritual orientations and so on, all the way to clear outside of the deen. So my suggestion would be broader than this term, that in general, I mean, even today, I'm offering you a structure. I'm not pretending like this structure is the only appropriate way of achieving this goal. I'm not pretending like this structure is a complete and total description of how Prophet Ibrahim dealt with it. And if you disagree or you find something better and so on, as long as it's not revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm ready to abandon this and go to what's better or bring them both together. And so any approach that is within the bounds of the Sharia and adds good accountability, you want to add a mentor, you want to do this, you want to do that, and be clear that this structure or your approach is not the only legitimate one. It is not the same as what Allah and His Messenger said. There's no harm in this. But beneficial knowledge is helpful, inshallah. Allah.
Going back to the concept of Quran, and if you believe that you have somehow managed to come up with a comfortable pushback against the comfortable power for yourself, but you want to make sure that your family is doing what it wants to do. They want to go and have an ice cream at a Friday shop that's $5 a cone. They want to do this, they want to do this, the wedding needs to be this way and that way. How do you deal with that?
So, mashallah, deep question. A couple thoughts that occurred to my mind. I suggest that in a lot of the discussion today, you focus more just to build the tools of doing this, on doing this with your own examples. Because when you do it with yourself, you already see the world through your eyes. And I'm trying to share with you some tools on how to challenge your own map of the world, to think more critically, to be more purposeful. Trust me, we're all human beings. I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from hypocrisy. With all this talk, it's great while we're in this room, and then when you're solo against one of those hawa, it's going to pull like a mountain behind it, right? So it's already a big struggle to learn some of these tools to apply as we face the pulls of dunya. When we're dealing with another person, even the close and family members of ourselves, who we know better than anyone else, there's another dimension to this. That you're using these tools and you're helping a person navigate their map of the world. So this is a higher level skill. It's very hard for me to teach both at the same time, and they're both very advanced. So I'm still going to welcome all questions, but I want you to just think about that as we do it, right? And so if I'm walking to an ice cream shop and you see it and it's like, right? And it's $7 a cone, right? Is that haram in and of itself? That's a technical question. You can come back. And again, we're learning today how to be spiritual without guilt tripping, okay? So if there is an evidence, but brother, $7 could feed all these people and so on and so forth, that's true, but it doesn't make it haram. Allah made a lot of things allowable. But then I'm challenging my own map. Am I doing this every day? Is that excessive? Can I balance? Am I challenging myself? But that's just one step. When I'm doing it with another person, other people never agree with you. You have to get them to agree with themselves. You have to get them to extend their own map of the world. Particularly when we're dealing with our children, say, or younger family members, there's also a big gap of life experience. So to not build resentment against the deen or resentment against the family, none of what we're talking about means that you have to prevent someone else from something that's mubah, that's allowable, because there's a higher level. In fact, exercise much more flexibility with the mubah, because the day when there's something that's haram, you're going to want to invest that trust to prevent that, even if they prevent it without understanding, but based on trust. If I've exercised all that trust on creating rules that are not hard and fast, or arguing about things where there is room for difference in the deen, then I'm not going to have that trust when something much more important happens. Now, I'll give you an uncomfortable example. And as we're used to in this classroom, I'm not imposing my opinion on you, I'm not asking you. You carry responsibility once you're out of this room for researching and understanding your own opinions, just as I'm not going to say that I said it as proof. Also, disagreeing with me doesn't offend me. That's perfectly normal. I'll give you my opinion, aloha. Sometimes families come to me and they say, my child is, really, alhamdulillah, they're a good kid. I'm going to give a more extreme example. But a lot of their friends are just into these drinks and so on and so forth. It's a big pull, but he always tells me he's open. She's telling me about it. But they're also really frustrated, they're not really sure about, they want to eat McDonald's. Should I be as strict on that and that? Now, it is an absolutely legitimate opinion, and it is a more conservative opinion, not to eat non-zabiha meat. But is the room that Allah placed on that issue the same as the room on alcohol? It is not. So if anyone individually adopts the opinion and is convinced of their opinion, that's absolutely their right. They think it's a stronger opinion, that's absolutely right. But I'm not talking about fiqh right now. This isn't a classroom. This is a dawah, an invitation project. If I feel like someone's on the verge and I gotta make a call, which one is worth being more strict on? Alcohol without it. You guys are hesitating in the answer. And that's our culture. And wallahi, I'm open to being wrong. قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Say, bring your proof if you are truthful. I acknowledge the opinion. I respect the person that does that. But if you're in a jam, even if you believe both are harmful, which does our Sharia clearly assign more harm to? There's no question about it. It's not my opinion. Wallahi, it's in the Quran. If you want us to open, I can. So also, even, and it's election season, right? And I'm not getting into you guys with the debate on you want to not. I have no problem if you don't participate in elections as long as you're doing something useful. You believe something else is a positive way to bring change, have at it. But you know what I don't see? People that don't participate because they say both choices stink. Since when do you have two horrible choices and you don't try to bring the lesser harm than the bigger harm. This is a clear example. This is clear principle in our deen. You don't like elections, pick the alcohol meat. You don't like that, pick another example. So also in applying these tools, you know, what we learned in the past about usul and so on is very appropriate in choosing our roles. Okay? I know this is a broader question than this, but I hope this helps a little bit. And inshallah, if there's follow-ons, we can go. Have one more question, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, good question. This is why a big reason why in our discussions together, I really emphasize the usul sciences, which is how to think, not just what to think. Because as new examples come up, you have to have principles. Like I just shared with you one of the maxims or the principles of fiqh, that just as harm is avoided, that a sub-principle of that is that when there are two harms that are inevitable, the lesser harm is brought in favor of the greater harm. Okay? So these principles are very valuable in that they can be applied. As lay people, average, you know, Muslims that are not in the political sphere, I encourage us to exercise a level of husn al-dhan, even with full right to criticize and discuss and so on, because in a sense, being a layperson in the political sense gives you a certain freedom from decisions or questions that people in that leadership are needed. And we need Muslim leaders in every sphere, including civic and political spheres. As I hope that more of our courageous kind of Muslim politicians, and it's not just politicians, candidates, people in the sphere, even people in the civic sector and service and nonprofits, build healthy and strong relationships, professional relationships with Islamic scholarship, so that these discussions can be had with the trust of confidentiality, with the privacy of nasiha. And right now, a big struggle of the American Muslim community and probably the Muslim Ummah overall is that scholars and activists are seen as enemies. You see it at any Muslim convention, and I think it's pathetic. And I know it's not easy, but it's unacceptable. So in reality, our Ummah needs all of this. There is no tell-all, simple answer in things that have not been clearly outlined in the Sharia, but there are principles. There are even principles and sometimes some of our leaders that are in a particular decision that, alhamdulillah, Allah, you know, gave us the flexibility not to have to make. There are, in other words, these compromises are not just a word. They are driven by values and principles, including, like I said, sometimes you don't have a good option, but you just pick the lesser of bad options. And so I hope perhaps next year or the year after, we'll have actually an introduction to like a survey of the introductory Islamic sciences across 5 to 7 short books, inshallah. And that will, inshallah, refine and coalesce this information. But for decisions that you're going, build a trustworthy relationship with a community of scholarship, or at least students of knowledge, inshallah, that can help you, but in private. You know, honestly, these Facebook wars, I don't know in what imaginary universe somebody thought that that's nasiha. That's a joke. You understand what I'm saying? And so even with husn al-dhan, I hope, inshallah, and I know, actually, I have private knowledge of people, alhamdulillah, that have seen some of these figures, maybe even figures that are falling into haram. In this case, it's not a political example, but it's another example, and gave sincere and private nasiha. Whether that was taken, I think that brings about better outcomes, inshallah. Great questions. So now, inshallah, I want to review and expand upon the broad categorizations that we talked about last time with 5 ways to deal with a feeling. And today, I want to expound on these and also add for you another lens on them, which is the energy and kind of passive versus active aspect of it. So he said the first category is what? Right? To suppress the feeling. okay? And we spoke a little bit about this. In general, it's the most individually harmful thing to do on a long-term or permanent basis. It can be wise to do on a temporary basis or waiting for the right context. In general, a feeling is almost like energy. So when I suppress a feeling, I ingest that energy. So it's shaking inside. It almost naturally wants to come out. And so if it's not done strategically or if it's ignored or becomes passive, it can really create a lot of problems such as depression, anxiety, and other feelings. Another is what? Express. Some people call this venting, although that word is used in many contexts. Okay? Then harm of this approach is what? That energy is out, but it's out all over somebody or something or some people. But again, it can be used. In particular, one of the judicious uses of expression, although it also intersects with this, is a trustworthy consultation, right, with somebody. In particular, I'll come to it in category one. A third is what? Escape. There was a very deep question last time, and we talked about, alhamdulillah, how typically, even if escape is an imperfect solution, generally if you're on the edge of acting on an impulse of passion or doing an imperfect escape that'll take the edge off, generally escape is better, even if it's some form of halal entertainment, even if it's some distance, even if it's switching it, even if it's, I got that fiery email and it's gonna season in that drafts folder for 24 hours before I click send. That's a form of escape, and it's a wise form because your view on it, mashallah, how many problems would be averted if people had a hard and fast 24-hour rule? And then when they would come back, they'd probably click delete instead of click send. So escapes are not perfect. Escapes can be harmful when they turn into addictions or permanent escapes. And so an escape can turn into an addiction, get into a permanent escape, but as a strategy, it is very effective. It can be very effective.
So escape here, are you referring to a delayed response or just completely walking away from something?
This is taking the feeling and pushing it inward, suppressing. This is taking the feeling and pushing it outward. This is taking the feeling and moving aside, creating a distance. So for example, really angry, hot on this thing, about to enter a shouting match, I just say, let's put this aside, and you go to the gym and just like sweat and work it out for a couple hours and then you come back. There is no doubt that for virtually every human being, doing that will improve their response to the feeling. That's an escape. Most forms of entertainment, and obviously we want to push ourselves towards entertainment, are escapes. Entertainment can be a very effective escape. More effective typically than entertainment is physical activity. Physical activity is a very effective escape. Even for people that are exposed to a lot of stress in their positions or a lot of tough decisions or whatever, building physical activity it's almost like an escape valve. Like I don't have a feeling, but it's just a very healthy, and it's much more than this, but it's a very, very healthy piece and a very difficult piece to build into our lives. And so these are all forms of escape. It's in that sense that I understand leaving an email in a drafts folder is not like some global escape in the sense of the word, but I'm using in the sense of lateral distance from the feeling. That there's that heat, I'm about to, give it to this person, and I'm just going to let 24 hours of distance come to me. Even if you go back and make a bad decision 24 hours later, it's going to be less bad than if you did it in that moment. That's an escape, any distance. Somebody, Michelle, it was a very deep question after class last night. you know, part of the sunnah, and again, I want to be very clear, this is a structure, this is not the structure, this is not Quran and sunnah. I'm giving you inspiration from values. Somebody has something better than this, or addition to this, or so on. I'm doing that. This is not something that Allah revealed. And also, as we're reflecting on examples, I'm giving my best human effort to reflect on it. That's not the limitation of that example, it's not the full description of that example. A very deep question I was asked after class last week was, we have this sunnah of sajdatul shukr, the prostration of thankfulness. Actually, you know what? I want you to do this as a mini case study. Question is as follows. One of the great sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the way, many of us may not know this sunnah, so you add to your knowledge today, is that when you have good news or something to be grateful for, you make what's called sajdat ash-shukr, the prostration of thankfulness. Okay? So instead of jumping up and down, screaming hallelujah or whatever it is, this is part of the sunnah to actually do this. Anybody seen this in popular culture lately? In sports. So you've seen like people when they make a goal or score a goal in soccer, sajda. Anybody else seen it elsewhere in sports? Okay, great. And so these examples are examples of just a good thing in dunya, make sajda. Sajda to shukr does not require wudu. Does not require wudu. And that's beautiful because it means that once you get that news and there's that joy, there's no excuse not to just go. It only takes a few seconds. You say Allahu Akbar, basically make sajda, and you say Allah, praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make Allah's tasbih, and say Allah. And that's the act. It just takes a few seconds. Question is, should we consider this a form of escape? I want you to think about that, discuss it for a few moments, and let me know what you come to. I suggest you do this in a groups of about 4, inshallah. It's going to be a quick one. We'll take about 3 to 4 minutes, inshallah. Is this a form of escape? Yes or no? And if it's sajda to shukr, and if not, what is it? Or is it escape in something else in this category?
The opposite. Instead of pulling back out, pulling back out, and like you're pushing it aside and trying to focus on what. Like when you're focusing on one thing and self-existence, you're just pushing yourself to the void, which isn't so like I think that's what pushing it aside.
Okay, let's come back together. Tough question. Uncomfortable question, because I know it's very uncomfortable assign the label escape to anything, obviously. And remember what we said, it's not a full description of the Sunnah, it's not a minimization of the Sunnah. We're trying to think how to apply this categorization, which is a human imperfect categorization, to raise our knowledge. Remember I said an escape with respect to the feeling is what? Suppressing is pushing it down, back in. Expressing is pushing it up and out. Escape is a lateral movement. It's a movement away. It's a movement away from the feeling, right? Movement away from the feeling. At first, sajda to shukr might look like that movement away, because it seems like there's this happiness, and then I'm putting like spiritual sauce on it, right? But I would suggest to you that that's not what it is at all. Why? The evidence of the ayah. لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما آتاكم. That you may not grieve over that which passed you by, nor be overjoyed with what He granted you. This ayah, if we spent the rest of the class in discussion, reflection on this ayah, we would not do it justice. So much depth in this ayah. First of all, something's coming to me, I'm happy, and in that ayah is the implication of what? That you may not be grieved over what passed you by, nor be overjoyed at what He granted you. You see, my nafs says, click, I got it. Ayah is saying, you didn't get it or miss it. It's all in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Written before you were an actor, before you were created, before you were born. Whether this matter is going to come to you or it's going to pass you by. That's in the ayah, in the language of the ayah. You're not the actor. So much depth. Question. There's one of my search engines, inshallah. I don't have the verse number anyway, so someone can look it up on Quran.com. Surah Al-Hadith, and 23, exactly.
But wouldn't it like saying that like
Surah 57, right? Yeah. Ayah number 23.
But to say that like all of life's blessings kind of just from a subjective standpoint, it seems like from a law standpoint, like yeah, obviously like He knows what's to come, and it's kind of just like a passage time. But when we look at things subjective from our own stuff, from our own standpoint, it's very novel and very mature of us to kind of look at life objectively. But it's really hard to sometimes detach yourself from like life as a whole and to like just see life as like a passage. Like yeah, they say this and this is like travel life like a wayfarer, all that. But sometimes we just get so caught up in life that like, given that mindset, and can like, would you still say it's not a form of escape? Like conditioned on the fact that we're like attracted and like attached to this.
Yes. As well. Very deep question, and these questions in our highly interactive class shows that we're thinking about it. Because what I'm going to say to you, your nafs is going to rebel, and it's about to rebel bad when I do what I'm about to do. But right now we're in the soft period. Why? Because in each of these, this is a very deep question, because I could carry this question further and say, well, if I'm not the actor, I'll just sit at home, it's coming anyway. That's again, we talked about this in our reflections about Prophet Ibrahim and tawakkul, trust. In Arabic, that's not even called tawakkul, that's called tawakkul. That's not trust in Allah, that's just leaving things alone. That's an extreme. But the extreme of feeling, if only I had said that differently, would have changed it. That's where that internal pain and turmoil comes. And that's where you say, subhanAllah, some of the companions, this was during a low moment after the Battle of Uhud and all the armchair quarterbacking, in this case by the hypocrites. We told you so. Young people, we shouldn't have gone out. This and that. After the result, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what in Surah Al-Imran? Almost half of Surah Al-Imran, by the way, is at this period. It's during this very difficult period of Uhud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, if you were secure in your beds, that not just death, but killing would have come to them at their bedside. This is so profound. That this qadr would have come to their bedside. So this doesn't mean I don't look back and review strategy. This doesn't mean you apply to the school, you get rejected, life's over, don't apply ever again because it's qadr that you're not going to get it. Who said? Go back, review, should I apply again? Or is this a sign that, let me get some advice, let me go talk to a mentor, let me talk to my parent? And the Prophet, this is counterintuitive. A lot of what we're talking about is counterintuitive. Prophet ﷺ has this incredible description by the companions. He used to take material means, like work hard, sweat, until we say, where's the trust in Allah? And he used to have this acceptance, spiritual peace, until you say, where's the means? Prophet ﷺ combined both in the most complete human form. Hard work, driven, so on. But also not slave to how the outcomes come, because the outcomes were never in his control. So we need to struggle with this. If you're not asking questions, we're not hearing the ahadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet says in the hadith, as he gives advice, he says, if all of the first and the last and the jinn and the human beings were to gather in a single place, what would happen? Right? They would not be able to benefit you except with something that Allah had decreed for you. And if the first and the last and the jinn and the human beings were to gather to harm you with something, they would not harm you except with something that Allah had decreed upon you. So these are uncomfortable, but they're also lifting our understanding. So I would suggest to you that Sajdat al-Shukr actually combines between these last two in our categorization. We said that the fourth was to manage, meaning to reframe, to use the mind to change how we think about the feeling, to change the feeling itself. And in that is a powerful understanding that the same sort of circumstances can be seen differently by human beings. This comes back to Brother Abrar's very deep question. I know it comes to each of us. A lot of what we're trying to do to help ourselves and then to help others is to do this, to get people to look at the same set of circumstances through a different lens. So in this simple example, good news came. Hello reaction, party. Yes, I'm awesome. I always deserve this. I was born for this moment. Like, that's the hell. But then you're taking a moment, coming down, sajda. What's happening? Recentering. Calming. Calming as in, I'm worthless. Never deserved. It's dunya. I wish I had never had this blessing. Is that the recentering we're having? That's the recentering that a lot of Muslims think is spirituality. And today we're learning that's not it either. Nobody asked you to be inhuman. Nobody asked you to loathe the blessing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the blessings of your Lord. It's a recentering. Alhamdulillah. This blessing was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our blessings. The dua, beautiful dua, is a person looks in a mirror. Oh Allah, as you have beautified and perfected my creation, my physical creation, perfect and complete my character, my inner creation. It's not looking back in the mirror, stuff for Allah. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is how a lot of us, I know I'm making light of it, but sadly a lot of people, a lot of their years of their life go on this type of, and you know what really shows it?
Yes, I am.
How many khutab? Say again?
Yes, I am
Jazakumullah khairan wa in shakartum lazidannakum. And as you show gratitude, I shall increase you. So also, alhamdulillah, this is part of our striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? You know a way that we can see that our spiritual understanding is really lacking? How many people associate khutab with guilt trips? Guilt trips. Guilt trips. That is a form of associating righteousness, spirituality, with self-loathing. You know, there's a statement, there's a story of an imam that got up to give the khutbah. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and khutbah al-hajjah, he said, we have told you to pray and you all don't pray. Told you to give zakah and you all don't give zakah. You're all useless. Aqim as-salah. Right? It's a light joke, but the ultimate guilt trip, right? The ultimate guilt trip. These ideas, by the way, for anybody here that's a parent, that's a mentor, that's an older brother or sister, that is a youth group leader, that is a teacher, that is an educator, everybody. If you think about this critically, this will bring something new into your preaching and teaching. Because it's human to do. I'm guilty of this many times. I'm sure I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. That it's when we're frustrated, when the first strategy is not working, typically what we do is guilt trip. That's why our look at Islamic history is superficial often. Let me tell you about the grand days of the past, and let me tell you about the lousy days of the present. If you don't have it, just stop being dramatic and close the gap. You see what I'm saying? If you want to see an example, look at the history with a critical eye to understand what can I bring into this to change my condition. If you have a lousy situation, work harder to find the positive that you're going to build off of. And I know this is not easy. It's easy for people that are not tested or in moments of privilege to find hope. Very difficult to find hope in moments of hardship. But in a sense, spirituality is empowering. It is for those moments. It is for that low piece that we challenge ourselves to do more than we would do by nature. So managing, for those of you that aspire to be therapists or counselors or work in psychology, or as a part or as a professional focus of your life, or even just out of your love of others, all of the parenting, etc., this is a big part. And learning this is a skill. I'm going to be very clear with you, and I say this to empower and encourage others, not to al-'a'idhu billah, mention anything. It is that intention. When I started to try to learn this, I did not have a community that believed in this to invest in it. I also didn't have the money to do this. I also didn't have the teacher to do this. And I did not have never presented myself as a therapist, and don't have any professional inspiration to specialize in this area. Just versant in it to help others, empower others, and walk with people solving their problems, inshallah. The better part of the last decade, to get together pieces that were not like pie in the sky fluffy things, help build and understand some of this structure. A great deal of money and a great deal of travel. Part of, I think, one of the proudest accomplishments for us at this masjid the last couple of years was the creation of the IUR Wellness Team, Counseling Referral Services. We have actually multiple young people in our community now that are in training, several of which are out of the area pursuing that training. My hope is whether they come back here or go to another community, that at least they had a home that said this is important, and this, what you're investing in, is important to help walk with people in solving their problems. So this, a lot of strategies, ideas, and so on, fall under moving people from this to this as a long-term strategy for what they cannot control and perhaps cannot even change. In parenting, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our families and our children, or in mentorship, but especially in parenting because of the closeness. As you work with someone else, there is a lot of this work to do because you ultimately don't have control of this outcome. So it's creating anxiety and discomfort in yourself that you don't control what choice this person is going to make. This loved one, this child, adult child, cousin, aunt, whatever it is. And so to reframe how you look at the same unchanging set of circumstances, even as you seek to change them, there's a lot of strategies here that are worth understanding. Now, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ, many examples in the Seerah where the Prophet ﷺ does things that we could categorize here. Young man comes and he says, I'm over Rasulullah, give me permission to commit zina. That's how he came. Now remember what I said earlier. When you're talking to somebody else, are you talking to them in their map or your map? Their map. How they see the world. This comes back to multiple questions that were mentioned earlier. I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question. Prophet ﷺ, does he have, of course, hasha that he does not, a view of the world, a spiritual state, and so on, where anything leads to the question, zina? Of course not. There are layers and layers of protection that even though there's that human desire, that there is so much understanding that that desire is not fulfilled in this way. So that question would never come. Of course, it's inappropriate even to mention it with Rasulullah, but many of the companions, many people. By the way, most of us with our parents, there's like 5 million layers of protection. Before, even if you're overwhelmed with that, you're never going to say it that way. But this person, in their state, the map of the world, where they had the courage to say Rasulullah with a bunch of companions around. The companions were upset. I mean, just think about a typical like Muslim gathering and what would happen. The young person, everybody's drinking coffee and says to the oldest and most respected person in the room, give me permission to do that. Be like, surprising, or worse. I can't say worse, I'll get in trouble. All right? That in this context, the Prophet ﷺ, who doesn't need the advice he's about to give the person because he's way above that level, that he's able to meet that young man where he is, intellectually and spiritually. Are you seeing what I'm talking about? So the Prophet ﷺ is not managing for himself. He's helping someone else manage how they see their own feeling. From his perspective, the Prophet ﷺ says, would you accept it for your mother? The person's like, of course not. Would you accept it for your sister? And goes on. Why is he doing this framing? Because he's helping a young man in that context understand it. This might not even work on you, by the way. Might not work on somebody else, but that's because he wasn't talking to you. This is a strategy contextualized. Intellectually. And the Prophet ﷺ empowers him spiritually. Now after he understands, still he just kind of made a fool of himself in front of all these people, right? He might feel that social pressure, might feel. Prophet ﷺ puts his hand, blessed hand ﷺ on his chest. And he says, Allahumma tahhir qalbah, waghfir dhanbah, wa hassin farjah. Oh Allah, purify his heart, forgive his sin, and protect and guard his chastity. So now everybody's like, I wish I asked that question so I get the dua of Rasulullah. You see how much it was flipped. You see how powerful this is. You see how forgotten this is. People see a person again being brought before Rasulullah for with alcoholism. Prophet ﷺ says, do not help shaitan against your brother. Flip the scales. By the way, you notice how I keep saying a person, an individual. Why am I saying that? Because the narration didn't come with the names of these people. We learned the lesson, but didn't call out the person. It's not because I forgot. It's not in the narration. The narration preserved the lesson, but did not embarrass the person, the individual. That person was redeemed in the moment and redeemed. I mean, now it's teaching all of us. So many examples where Prophet ﷺ centers himself. And that's why I'm suggesting you start with yourself, because that's another layer of skill. But learning to do this with ourselves, every person in this room has something that they're stuck on that would benefit from hard spiritual work on this. Most of us work spiritually accidentally. We're not intentional about it. Salat al-Fajr, you know the routine. After that, Falaq or Nas, take your pick. And then you go that and sajda. You might even be saying sajda for good things. Oh Allah, give me a good akhirah, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah. It's great. You know what would come into your salah if you came in as yourself? Fully respectful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you made dua for this problem that you're having, for this aspiration. That in that dua, it wasn't like, oh Allah, I've got this exam, give me success, Allahu Akbar. But you came with your vulnerability, with your confusion, with your desperation, with your uncertainty. If you came with full submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you really asked from the bottom of your heart, do you know what would come into your head? It was individualized at that level. Something else entirely. That's intentional, lived spirituality. Accidental spirituality is checking off a checklist. Checking off a checklist is better than ignoring the checklist. But I'm giving you a higher level. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, set. That is better than neglecting the priorities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not a bad thing. That's a level of yourself or someone else. You should build on that level. Don't say, oh, I'm not where He said, give it all up. No, that's somewhere. But I'm telling you, there's a higher level. Prophet Ibrahim is showing us there's a higher level. Fifth is letting go or releasing. It is the healthiest way, many suggest, of dealing with a feeling. It goes beyond the mind. And I mentioned it last time. I hope the framing in the beginning of today's class helps you get a deeper dimension. And I would suggest a structure, a broad structure. The point of these structures and categorizations give us a place to categorize things. Ask everybody to put down your pens or pencils for a second, or certainly your phones or whatever else, and really center yourself in the space. I'm just going to do a quick exercise with you. This exercise is individual. This exercise may kind of rile up the nafs. And I'm going to ask you to just be aware, be centered, please be silent, and just really, for a moment, a lot of people find it helpful if they close their eyes, and so they kind of eliminate visual distraction. But if you want to do it with your eyes open, that's cool, but get centered. And I want you to not only be aware of your outside, of yourself, but also be more aware of your inside. Okay? Particular, take awareness of your breathing. I take full awareness of that breathing, every breath that's coming in and out. You may start to notice your heartbeat. Okay? And just get very, very, very centered. For a moment. I'm going to ask you to be conscious as I say words, things are coming into your mind's eye. You're imagining things as I speak. I want you to just be conscious of the portraits that your mind are painting, the sounds that your minds are bringing, maybe even the feelings. Ask you to think about the most beautiful moment you experienced last Ramadan. Now, at first, Ramadan is kind of general. You got a lot of memories coming through your mind. But I want you to center yourself on a day, on a night. If you had unique circumstances, you don't remember Ramadan that well, you can think of Hajj, Umrah, the last very intense spiritual moment. I want you to remember a time and a place. As you're remembering it, I want you to see the environment that you were in. Is it outside? Is it the Kaaba? Is it the walls? Hear the sounds? See yourself? Some of you may be looking from the perspective of yourself in that space, like as if you're looking out your eyeballs. Other people see it as if they're watching a movie. You see yourself as a character. Our minds work in different ways. But I want you to be in that space. Now, with that very vividly in your mind, while you're staying focused, I want you to tell me a word that describes how you feel. A word out loud that describes how you feel right now. Not in that moment, but right now.
Calm.
Calm, another word. Peace, another word. Relax, another word. Thankful, another word. Free. Want people to focus on that word, free. Some people will say liberated. Some people will say light. Do you feel physically light? A lot of you may have asked, why do I use the word letting go? These are just 5 words of 500 that you could say right now. Do you understand why we're using the word letting go? When you let go of the pulls of dunya, you feel physically lighter, emotionally lighter. I didn't change anything about the world just now. I changed how you see the world. Nothing changed. I didn't tell you not to study or whatever, but you didn't have time to do any of that. You changed how you see the world. Now recenter yourself. Recenter yourself, move out of that space. We're leaving that space. We're going to stay in that space a long time. You'll felt more light, more liberated, more free, more. But for a moment, we're going to distance ourselves. You might want to reclose your eyes or recenter yourself, whatever you're doing, to be fully present in the moment. And ask you a very different question. I want you to think about a specific person that really, really annoys you.
One person.
Don't say their name, but think about a person that really makes you uncomfortable, that really annoys you. I haven't judged that person, I haven't criticized them. All I've said is they annoyed you. So some of you, your nafs is like, astaghfirullah, I'm in the masjid, I can't think of this person. Chill out. I just said that they annoy you. But I want you to think about them. Really bring them to your mind's eye. Could even be that you have a very good relationship with this person, but they have this thing that they did recently that annoys you. I'm just talking about the moment. Right now, this person annoys you. It'd be better if they annoy you regularly. And the more vivid this is, the more you're willing to be vulnerable and actually open up to what I'm asking you to do, the more vivid your reaction is going to be. This is an uncomfortable question. The difference between this and Ramadan is that you're willing to follow me to Ramadan or the Kaaba. Right now, your nafs is rebelling against what I asked you to do. And that's okay. I'm not asking you to beat up your nafs. I'm just asking you to be conscious of it. trying to make the pull of dunya real for you. As we go through dunya, the reason it's easy to talk about and difficult to live is because whims don't announce themselves when they come. They just pop up. They're not sins. It's not sinful to have a hawa or desire. And you weren't expecting it and I just brought it. If you're following me, I brought whims. Now tell me, as you recenter yourself on that person, that thing, keep in mind, I didn't say this is a bad person. This might be a child that you love and respect, but right now they're doing something and it's annoying you because they're hurting themselves and they don't know it. I didn't say it's a bad person. Might be a brother, a sister, might be a parent, and you love and adore this person. The reason they're annoyed is because you're trying to help them and they won't let you help you. It's uncomfortable. How do you feel? One word. How do you feel? Sad. Frustrated. Resentful. Someone said helpless. Disappointed. Now I want you to move from these descriptions and give me more base, more visceral, more like physical descriptions. Why do you feel helpless? You're giving me an analysis that's good. I want you to go a level further. Not why, don't tell me about the person. Tell me what you feel that's making you feel.
Angry.
Angry. Why? What do you feel in your body? Many people say they feel helpless because they feel trapped. Stressed. How is the stress manifesting in your body? Tightness. Somebody said tightness. Where do you feel tightness in your body? In your chest. Several people are feeling it in their chest. Anyone feeling it somewhere else?
Stomach.
Their heart. Some people are feeling it in their stomach. Some people feel it in their neck and their back. Or in your breath, a changing. Anybody notice that their pulse or heartbeat changed when I changed my request? When I asked for annoyance, was it the same heartbeat as what you had during the spiritual? Absolutely not. The more you settled into it, the more your body responded to what I'm doing. Now, you can come back for a moment and then I'm going to recenter you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُ. And we know, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that your chest constricts with that which they say. Keep in mind, this person is an honorable man. He's a chaste man. Person of values and ethics. And a bunch of, people that were riffraff, immoral people, had the gall to call him man, soothsayer, liar, magician, after something else. This caused the response to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's tightness. People feel it here, some people feel it in the stomach, some people feel it in the small of the back or up at the neck area. Another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse says, فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يُكَذِّبُونَكَ وَلَكِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بِآيَاتِهِ لَا يَجْحَدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes the way the Prophet ﷺ sees the same set of facts. He says, they're not calling you a liar. But the wrongdoers, they hold Allah's ayat in contempt. So they just lash out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hajj that we know that your chest constricts with what they say. And gives the Prophet ﷺ a spiritual remedy. We'll come to another one, inshallah. Now I want you to come back, recenter yourself, close your eyes if you need to, with the annoying situation. Whims come in 4 major categories in this categorization I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you 3. We're about to be introduced to our first one. We're going to break down what's annoying you about this person. but not in the way you think. I'm not going to ask you what they said, what they did, and so on. I just want you to be centered on it. And I want you to think about your hawa, about your desire in a different way. Is it possible that you're annoyed because you want to control that person and you don't have control? So for a moment, can you let go of wanting to control that person? Can you release the hawa, the desire of wanting to control that person? It's just a decision. It's just a decision. Can you let go of the need to control that person and make them conform to what you want? Now, as I say this, your nafs wants to hold on to desires. Some of you will feel a tightening at the top of your esophagus, like, no, I can't let this go. But we are already prepared for that. We talked earlier on about how the nafs wants more and more dunya, but it's never full. So I didn't say you can't help this person. I just said let go of the desire to control them. Can you let go of wanting to control this person? And more? And more. Hawa is like a tissue box. Sometimes you let go of one and 5 others bubble up. We're not doing a sin review. It's not wrong to have hawa. It's constricting and limiting you to hold on to this. So can you let this person be exactly as you want them to be? Can you let this person do everything you want them to do? And let go of needing to see that outcome? It's just a decision. Can you let go more and more and more? Now, can you let this person not listen to a thing you say, oppose everything you tell them to be, do everything opposite of what you want, and you're going to notice different things bubbling up? Probably, if you're centered in yourself, you're going to notice a constriction. Might be in the same part of your body, might be somewhere else. There's no doubt that the mind and the heart have a physiological effect on the body. Okay, let this person be different than what you want them to be. And can you let go of wanting to control this person? And more, and more, and more. Now, can you let just this person be as they are? Can you let this person just be as they are? Can you just let this person exist and let go of wanting to control this person? Remember what we said about loving dunya. Some people react to the opposite, to hatred, but that's not a reaction. We're looking for the balance. So some people may tell them to let go of wanting to control. They start desiring to lose control. It's not what I'm asking you to do. Lacking control is just another part of not having. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about indifference. Can you just let the person be and recognize that you don't control the outcome? And more. More. How do you feel? How do you feel right now? Okay, so some people are having a physiological reaction. Some people are sweating, right? Absolutely, it's hard work. How else do you feel? Mad. Appreciate you sharing that. Part of what happens is as we hunt for desires, more bubble up that have been suppressed inside. We've raised our consciousness of how many desires you have in. And so sometimes you pull out 1, 5 more pop up. How else do people feel? Somebody said relieved. How else does anyone else feel? Afraid. Okay. Calm. Light. How many of you feel a little bit lighter? Okay, so several people feel lighter. I did this for a couple minutes, centered on one type of desire. If you haven't done this in a while, then you got a few thousand or 100 or 5 buried inside of you. If you did this for a little bit longer, think you would feel a lot lighter? So come back, inshallah, and open your eyes. Is this new to you? Different perspective? A lot of us, when we think about desires, right, at first you'd feel guilty, letting that person annoy you. Trying to give a different perspective. Right now, if you want to go try to change the outcome, you would change it as a different person. Because you wouldn't come with the baggage of dunya. You see what I'm saying? When I come to a person married to the outcome that I don't control, it's like running a marathon carrying tons of bricks on your back. You can still move, but you're constricted. You're heavier. So nothing I did just said is wrong to change or go to counseling or talk to that person and so on, but what we're doing is we're lightening the load. We're letting go of the constrictions of dunya. But I only did this. Having a person that annoys you is a mix usually of a lot of different things. I told you I'd share with you 3. And what whim did we just talk about? What whim did we just talk about? Talked about the whim to control. A lot of desires in dunya are rooted off of the whim to control. The whim to control. Remember all the way to the beginning, we talked about the difference between whimming and having a goal. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Somebody's like, well, I'm a supervisor at work. I guess I should just do nothing and let everybody do what they want. No. It's the difference between possessing something or even seeking to acquire it and whimming for it. Like I'm miserable. I'm not happy. I'm unfulfilled until I get this. Releasing you of the need to have your spiritual and emotional state tied to whether you possess or you lack control. So you can just flow with the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, work for the positive outcomes, but be pleased with the portion of dunya that you've been given. Underneath these, which we're not going to get to today, there are several different emotions. Most of us, when we think about it, we think about these, the unlisted ones. I'm lifting you a level up. So several people, they reacted with these. They felt fear. They felt fear because when they thought about it, they want to control the person. They feel that they're not going to listen, and so they started fearing for the future. So what we're doing is going, and the people that get really good on this, you know what they do? They don't react. They go hunting. Hunting for whims. In other words, is I'm going through dunya, I'm picking up all this baggage. Right now, as you start, you're more like letting go of all this stuff that's been ingested and we haven't been conscious of. So you get good at this, you let go more and more and more, so you can be liberated of the traps and the constriction of dunya. And just like loving and hating, you neither desire to control, nor you desire to have absence of control. It's just dunya. You work towards your goals, and the outcomes are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Should I give you the other 2 or make you wait?
No, tomorrow's not guaranteed.
You learned the secret. Another is the whim for approval. To want somebody to approve of you, or to want somebody to disapprove of you also. Both are limiting. Both are limiting. A lot of us face this as activists, as leaders, as whatever, and somebody comes up, you give this talk, for example. And mashallah, people come up, sister, great job, great talk, jazakumullah khairan, is great. And the second person, mashallah, may Allah bless your parents and so on. And then somebody comes up and dumps toxicity on you. Says, mashallah, I don't know whether you're after fame or whatever. He uses all this flowery language and so on and did it and just says this. Now here's the thing. Is that person just hates you and giving you like ego-filled nonsense? Or is it really at the core a good nasiha expressed in an ignorant way? Is everybody else telling you what you want to hear, and that person's the only person that's courageous enough to tell you the truth but just doesn't care to say it nicely? Or did everybody else tell you and this person's got personal beef with you? You will never know until you let go of this. Because when that person talks to you, there's that nefs rears its head. That ego's like, how dare you talk to me? Inside. And when you let go of needing to be approved or disapproved by this person, you can understand what was at the core. Give you a quick example, let out some of my secrets. At the IAR, mashallah, there's a thing about being a man. People have this thing on their chest that they're making them uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with it, so they come and deposit it in the imam's chest, and then they walk away, they feel great. So I have the distinct pleasure of after khutab or events or whatever, somebody comes up and says, you know, you shouldn't invite that khatib. Now I don't know, all you are going to think twice before talking to me again. I don't know whether that person's got personal beef with that person or if they have a substantive outcome. So you know what we do at the IAR? Look at this, say, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much for giving that feedback. I've heard you. But at the IAR, we have an online khutbah feedback form. And that's how we formally review requests. If you would go in, fill it out, that way not only I will see it, we review everyone personally, but the education chair, the chairman of IAR, and half the universe. So what did I just do? It's a system for separating the need to be personally approved from real nasiha. So if that person was sincere in the nasiha, what did I just tell them? You don't have, if you were sincere, and I tell you, oh no, like, every leader in this place is going to read your specific feedback and you don't have to worry about me translating, that's amazing. Absolutely, I'll fill it out. And they do, and we follow through. It's not just talk. Literally, everybody has access to that. I have read every khutbah feedback form at this center since I've been here personally. But if they're after beef, are they going to want to be embarrassed in front of half the universe instead of just me? But see, I don't have to judge their heart. If they have a nasiha, but it's not that important, it was like important enough to deposit in the imam's chest, but not important enough to spend 3 minutes on the computer, then I don't have to be worried about this. Because it's not that important to them, then I also don't have to make it any more important than they made it. It's a system to separate my ego, the khatib's ego, the IR's ego, from well-meaning advice, even ignorantly framed well-meaning advice. This way, you don't have to judge the person's heart. A lot of us win for approval. Whims are not sins. It just happens. The question is whether you're awake or asleep and do it. The last, or the third of three, can't really teach us one until you get much more. Swimming for security. Security. Big problem with particularly younger generation, our generation, is that we conflate terms of physical danger with opinions and so on. These are all advanced forms of women for security. And there's a lot to say about this, but inshallah we can continue to build it, inshallah. But women for these broadly, the whims of dunya, typically if you start scratching back, peeling back, they will fall in these broad categories. It doesn't mean you can't work to change outcomes or work to impact others, but it means to release yourself of the baggage and the constriction of dunya, inshallah. So I know it's really broad, really new. We need more and more examples, inshallah, of how to do it. Inshallah, we will do so. Look back at the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah and complete the passage. Next time, inshallah, we're anticipating a guest. Imam Suhaib Webb is a very respected American scholar with a degree, alhamdulillah, from Central Oklahoma University in education and also a degree in Islamic law and Islamic Sharia. Many of you may have followed him on Instagram or read his posts. We are expecting, inshallah, his visit. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the nasib and qadr next class, we'll get to have, inshallah, a nice chat with him, also ask him questions, get his perspective. The day before, he'll be giving a lecture at Duke University on youth leadership from 6 to 8, inshallah. The announcement is sponsored by the Duke MSA, inshallah. I encourage you to consider that as well as going through more examples, inshallah, of applying the releasing, inshallah, of whims. This was all an exercise in the 5th category, which is releasing and letting go of the constrictions of dunya. The more personal it is, the more pointed the outcomes, inshallah. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us spiritual wellness and strength.
Yeah, the white lecture hall. Yeah, inshallah, man. So I was about to ask if I can make the announcement myself, but he did it for us.
Yeah, inshallah.
Will you guys also plan to send out emails? Like he's also.
Yeah, inshallah.